Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us for this webinar. I hope you're all safe and well. I'm Matthew Campelli, the Director of Sustainability at Touchline and the editor of the Sustainability Report. Today, we're talking about climate change, more specifically, how we can tackle climate change by forming strategic partnerships. Although we're currently in the midst of a coronavirus pandemic that has rocked the world, many scientists believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the upheaval and human life that will be lost as a result of climate change. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's landmark 2018 report stressed that if we don't take immediate and concrete action, we'll endure catastrophic and irreversible climate impacts within a decade. This is affecting everyone and every organization. In the latest World Economic Forum Global Risk Report, industry leaders predicted that the 5 most likely risks their organizations will face are all environmental or linked to climate change. These include extreme weather, climate action failure, natural disasters, biodiversity loss, and human-made environmental disasters. And 24% of chief executives are extremely concerned about climate change and environmental degradation. But when life gives you lemons, the only thing we can do is make lemonade. Over the course of history, major challenges have made humans and organizations more innovative, more resilient, and more collaborative. The threat provided by climate change gives us an opportunity to reset things and make changes for the better. The changes we do make, however, will need to be rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented to have any sort of impact. This sounds like a daunting prospect, right? Trying to take on big global issues like climate change can feel like an overwhelming prospect. So today, we're going to be talking about how strategic partnerships can help us achieve company objectives and address big issues like climate change. We'll be looking at this through the prism of Dow's carbon partnership with the International Olympic Committee. Dow became the official carbon partner of the IOC in 2017 after taking on a similar role for the 2014 Winter Games in Sochi and the 2016 Summer Games in Rio. The partnership has enabled the IOC to become carbon neutral, with Dow offsetting its unavoidable emissions through investments in material science and low carbon innovation across the value chain. For those in our audience who aren't familiar with the companies, Dow is a world-leading material science company delivering solutions in the fields of packaging, infrastructure, and consumer care. The IOC, of course, is one of the most recognizable sports brands in the world, as a leader of the Olympic movement and owner of the Olympic Games. And ERM, Environmental Resources Management, is a leading global provider of environmental, health, safety, risk, and social consulting services, as well as sustainability-related activities. ERM is also the independent assessor of the Dow and IOC Carbon Partnership. So I'm delighted today to introduce a representative from each of these organizations who will explain their experience of tackling climate change through strategic partnerships. Nicoletta Piccolrovazzi is the Global Technology and Sustainability Director of Dow Olympic Sports Solutions. Representing the IOC is Michelle Lemaitre, the Head of Sustainability. And Braulio Pikman is an expert advisor for ERM and an expert reviewer of national inventories for the UN. Welcome to you all. Today we'll be discussing the following topics: why strategic partnerships are crucial to addressing climate change, how to cultivate these strategic partnerships, and what can be achieved through working in partnership. Just a bit of housekeeping before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent to your inbox in the next day or so. We'll have a Q&A section at the end, so please enter your questions in the question box throughout the presentation and we'll get through as many as we can at the end. And we'll be hosting a number of polls throughout the session to get you involved and to gauge your own experiences. In section 1, we'll be discussing how to identify partners with similar values and objectives. During each of these sections, all of our speakers will contribute in order to give you the full spectrum of perspectives. But before I start, I want to get you thinking about the first poll, which we'll go through at the end of this section. How important a priority is climate change for your organization? Without further ado, let's get into the content. Starting with Michelle, we'll investigate how the IOC and Dow identified each other as key strategic partners. Welcome, Michelle, and happy Olympic Day.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Hello, everyone, and happy Olympic Day to everyone. Thank you for taking time to listen to us today. So, building a better world through sport. Building a better world through sport is the raison d'etre of the Olympic movement. And for us, a better world is a healthy world and a sustainable world. Olympic Agenda 2020, the strategic roadmap of the Olympic movement, was the starting point for the IOC's Sustainability Strategy. Developed in 2014, it contains 40 recommendations that focus on 3 broad pillars that are essential for sport's ability to have a positive impact on the wider world, that being credibility, sustainability, and youth. In response to specific recommendations outlined in Olympic Agenda 2020, the IOC Sustainability Strategy was developed and subsequently published early 2017. The impacts of climate change are felt by us all. Sport, across all continents and across all disciplines, is having to adapt to changing weather conditions whilst also understanding how its own operations are contributing to it. The IOC Sustainability Strategy is based on its 3 spheres of responsibility, that being as an organisation, as owner of the Olympic Games, and as leader of the Olympic movement. And here, the Olympic movement, we're talking about the international federations and the national Olympic committees based throughout the world. It focuses on 5 strategic areas that are relevant to all 3 spheres of responsibility: infrastructure and natural sites, sourcing and resource management, mobility, workforce, and climate. Although climate is cross-cutting across the first 3 strategic areas, the decision was taken to highlight it independently because of its ever-increasing importance and the need to act and address it in a targeted manner. The IOC Sustainability Strategy contains 18 objectives across its 3 spheres of responsibility, specific to the 2017-2020 period. The 9 shown here are relevant to our first sphere, that being as an organisation. They are relevant to the IOC's operations in Lausanne, Switzerland, where our headquarters and the Olympic Museum are, and also in Madrid, Spain, where our broadcasting operations and the Olympic Channel services are based. As you can see, carbon emissions are relevant to the majority of these objectives. Through the construction of our headquarters, Olympic House here in Lausanne, energy efficiency, waste reduction, what we source, our travel, our freight, how our corporate events are staged, and specifically, number 8, to achieve carbon neutrality. And that is where the IOC and Dow came together to collaborate. As owner of the Olympic Games, we have 4 objectives for the 2017-2020 period that aim to, first of all, ensure sustainability is addressed as a strategic topic from the very beginning, reinforce sustainability commitments in the host city contract. Those specific to carbon management are listed here on the left of the screen. Number 3, strengthen support monitoring of the Olympic Games implementation of sustainability commitments and requirements. And as listed on the right, number 13, build strategic partnerships to develop innovative, sustainable solutions, which is what the IOC and Dow have successfully done through their carbon partnership. The text shown here is also taken from our sustainability strategy and speaks specifically to collaboration and strengths. We knew from the very beginning that to achieve our objectives, collaboration would be essential. In addition to Dow's products and technologies, they also had the experience, as one of the IOC's top partners, of having successfully developed and implemented a carbon mitigation program for the Sochi 2014 Winter Games and the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. It was this carbon mitigation program that was adapted and expanded upon to respond to the IOC's objective of carbon neutrality. Through the implementation of Dow's low-carbon solutions and technologies in areas such as packaging, construction, and insulation, and across a large geographical footprint, significant carbon reductions were achieved. They were verified in alignment with international standards and subsequently attributed to the IOC. In parallel, of course, the IOC also developed and is implementing its own carbon reduction plans specific to its own operations. IOC and Dow both recognise the global issue of climate change and have formulated objectives to address it. Combining forces to work on it and have a bigger impact makes sense in many ways. The proposal put forward by Dow responded to our needs. However, it went beyond carbon neutrality. Through Dow's investment in low carbon solutions and technologies, it is actually changing business as usual across a multitude of industries and markets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Now let's hand over to Nicoletta and get her perspective. Hello, Nicoletta.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Michelle, for the introduction, and to the audience, thank you for joining us today in this webinar. I'm happy to speak about this partnership that is so close to me personally, as I have been involved in it from the beginning and also had the privilege to lead the Dow team that developed and implemented our sustainability partnership with sport. Dow is a material science company that is dedicated to giving our customers the solutions they need to both achieve their goals and create a better tomorrow. We have global capabilities and operations, and through our 37,000 employees, we serve a global customer base. It is, though, our ambition that I would like to highlight here. It is our ambition to be the most innovative, customer-centric, inclusive, and sustainable material science company in the world. And this is not just an ambition, it determines our culture and it guides our actions. We also hold the deep felt belief that we need to partner to be successful. By closely collaborating with customers and with each other, we will accomplish the kind of breakthroughs we need to transition to a more sustainable future. Sustainability is part of how we design our products. It has been a cornerstone for Dow's business for many years, and it is a journey we have been on for nearly 30 years. We have set 3 10-year stretch goals, our first starting in 1995. Our first set of goals, here referred to as the 2005 EH&S goals, were very much about Dow's own footprint, about our operation, and how we could reduce waste, risks, and costs. Our next set of goals projected us towards the external world, focusing on what we call Dow's handprint, redesigning products and processes for our customers. And our third set of sustainability goals, we refer to the blueprint goals. They reflect the understanding that we need to collaborate to be able to tackle the large challenges we face. As populations grow and consumption increases, resources start diminishing at an accelerated pace. Society needs to find new ways to better balance economic progress with sustainability. This is why we have identified some key areas of focus. While continuing our progress on our sustainability goals, we are introducing these 3 key areas of focus and additional commitments. Our areas of focus are climate protection, circular economy, and safer materials. We have chosen these not only because they are critical, because it's where we can make the highest impact. 1 week ago, we have announced our accelerated efforts to take a leading role within our material science industry to help both mitigate climate change and the issue of plastic waste. When we talk about our Dow Protect the Climate targets, these reflect our commitments to accelerate our work with our suppliers, customers, and also with the value chain partners to ensure that Dow is carbon neutral by 2050 on scope 1, 2, and 3. Also, by 2030, Dow will reduce its net annual carbon emissions by 5 million tons on scope 1 and 2. And how will we get to carbon neutrality by 2050? We will need to focus on these three things. We will need to focus on our own manufacturing operations, building on the progress we have made already to date. We will need to ensure that our products are more sustainable than alternative products. And we'll need to collaborate to innovate next generation technologies. And this is really what takes you to the key theme of this webinar: collaboration and partnership. Taking our partnership with the IOC as an example of a collaboration on climate change and climate action, we have identified three foundational building blocks that enabled a successful collaboration. The first one is strategic alignment. Then we have long-term commitment and continued evolutions that underpinned this partnership model. When we discuss strategic alignment, there are three elements that come to mind. Dow and the IOC are aligned on the ambition to protect the climate. Reducing CO2 emissions is a key priority for both Dow and the IOC. We both realize that we need to go beyond our own boundaries. Hence, I had already introduced this concept of the footprint, the handprint, and the blueprint, which really illustrates that we need to engage the entire value chain. We need to engage our customers while continuing to make progress on our own operation. And Michelle has referred to the three spheres of influence. We also recognize that we have complementary capabilities and skills. We believe our material science solutions have a role to play to enable a lower carbon future, and sport has a role to play to be a catalyst for change. Let's look at the partnership journey. Dow became the carbon partner as we realized we could bring something unique to the table. We could go beyond existing best practices in events of retiring offsets to develop new projects with our customers and partners that use sports and science as a catalyst to accelerate the adoption of technology. And all these projects go beyond business as usual in their markets. So initially we focused on the Olympic Games, starting with the Sochi Games. Then we realized, once we had seen the success, that we could go beyond just the host country to engage the entire host region. This is what we did with the Rio Games. And now, as the official carbon partner of the IOC, we have created a global platform that advances lower carbon technologies. Back to you, Matthew.
Thank you very much for giving us your perspective there, Nicoletta. Let's move on to Braulio now. Braulio, what's your view on identifying appropriate strategic partnerships when it comes to tackling issues like climate change?
Thank you, Matthew. Hello, everyone. Hello, Nicoletta and Michelle. I hope you are all in good health and safe in these difficult times. ERM and myself both have been working with climate strategies and assurance of climate mitigation initiatives for more than 25 years, I guess now. And we have been following the progress that has been made by the many different sectors of the economy and the society as a whole. And we came to the point where the Paris Agreement demanded more ambition from all entities participating in this process. And I believe that this initiative, where ERM is playing a role of assurance to bring credibility to the whole process, is all about increased ambition. So the main goal is to get bold results in terms of climate mitigation activities by connecting different parts of the value chain to achieve these results. The history of implementation of climate mitigation activities starts with companies mainly trying to reduce their own footprint, and Nicoletta presented that progress line talking about the footprint, the handprint, and the blueprint. And this trend is now moving in the direction of involving the users and the whole economy as part of the process. And that ties very well with circular economy. The concept of circular economy is connected to the idea of minimizing the use of natural resources and reducing the amount of waste. And to that end, to frame projects that could bring climate benefits under this framework, Dow has created a specific climate framework, which is the Dow Climate Framework 2.0 now, that allows you to measure and to account in an accurate way for emissions reductions that you may obtain in the entire value chain of your products or of your activity. So following, how do we identify strategic partners that can obtain these bold results that are connected with the raised ambition described in the Paris Agreement? It's very important that you migrate from the traditional partnership that usually we observe, where companies from the same sector try to work together to get better results. So this partnership is a completely different approach because it's a vertical one. Dow and IOC, they are complementary, as it was said. So you are connecting someone in the production chain with someone connected to the public, the general public, and that is a means to increase the reach of your actions and to get people involved with what we consider the next level of ambition, which is, besides operating efficiently, producing low carbon technology products, having the users using them efficiently. And then in the end of life, returning these products to the life cycle of the value chain. So I think these are the elements that would be part of any new partnership being defined for climate mitigation at this new ambition level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Braulio, for your perspective. And that brings us nicely on to our first question that we're going to ask our audience today. How important a priority is climate change for your organization? So we're going to launch this little poll now, and it'd be great if as many of you as possible could get involved in answering this question. So how important a priority is climate change for your organization? Is it A, business imperative, B, a priority but without a concrete strategy, C, not the highest priority, D, you're at the very start of your journey, or E, your company is totally unconvinced? Just to give you another 10 or 15 seconds now to answer that question before I close the poll off. Okay, just a few more seconds now. Okay, and let's see the results there. So it looks like the vast majority, or just over half of people on the call, their organizations have climate action as a business imperative, which is really, really encouraging. Only a small percentage, 3%, work for organizations who are not convinced by climate action. So before we move on, let's recap some of the learnings that we saw in part one. So firstly, before seeking out a partner, it's important to make sure that you have your own house in order in terms of ambitious climate targets. Secondly, make an effort to identify a partner with similar objectives and complementary skills. And thirdly, it's important to go into a partnership with a long-term view. Let's move on to section 2 now. Now that we've identified an appropriate partner, how do we work together to find solutions to our organizational problems and wider issues like climate change? Before we move on to this section, let's get thinking about the second poll that we're going to have. We'll review this one at the end of section 2. What do you look for most in a sustainability partner? So to kick off our section on finding solutions and making an impact, let's hand over again to Nicoletta. The floor is yours again, Nicoletta.
Thank you, Matthew. So the objective of the partnership was clear. The objective was to mitigate the IOC's carbon footprint through climate benefits from technology projects. As we started exploring this, we had first of all to develop a framework. We did this together with international carbon experts, and we validated this framework with ERM for the purpose of this program. Another thing that is important to state is that we wanted to only offset or balance the unavoidable emissions. So we asked the IOC to both the IOC and also the organizing committee of the Olympic Games to measure and reduce the emissions in order that only the unavoidable ones would be balanced. And then the third piece was that we actually, our ambition was actually to go beyond the actual footprint to deliver a positive climate legacy. So to deliver in terms of the CO2 reductions. So how did we think about that? There is no country in the world that is not experiencing firsthand the effects of climate change. Greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere are at an all-time high. At the same time, many of the solutions already exist to reduce CO2 emissions. They need to be broadly adopted. So, for example, here we see that buildings account for 28% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. And buildings also, or the built environment sector, offers significant opportunities. According, for instance, to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the building sector offers the largest cost-effective greenhouse gas mitigation potential, with net cost savings and economic gains possible through the implementation of existing technology. So that's the opportunity. This is why we are seeing this as an opportunity. And as one of the world's largest and most advanced material science companies, we have solutions for many different industries that we wanted to deploy to address this challenge to unlock CO2 reductions across the value chain. So here you see the sectors that we are targeting for mitigation projects. Again, not only we have the technologies, but there is also a significant greenhouse gas reduction opportunity. And Dow is therefore in these sectors introducing low carbon technologies together with customers and project partners to push the adoption of these low carbon technologies to verify the results and to balance the IOC's footprint. Now, every actor in this project has their role to play. Dow and the project partners bring the materials. We support the project implementation. We contribute carbon expertise and verify the carbon results from the project. The IOC provides the global platform of sport that helps raise visibility on our solutions across the value chain. And the project, of course, then contributes to the IOC Sustainability Strategy. The customers and partners that join this partnership, they have the potential to gain competitive differentiation, to enhance their sustainability expertise and profile, and also get some global positioning through the program. So let's explore a few of these projects that we have done. We have a portfolio of more than 20 projects implemented. And so this just shows you some images as a snapshot to illustrate some of the projects. We will dive into more detail on all of these projects in the upcoming webinars. If I go from left to right here, for instance, we have the first project is a project where we planted native cypress trees in Louisiana in partnership with the Restore the Earth Foundation. Not only will the project lead to 40,000 tons of CO2 reductions over 40 years, but the forest also protects residents improves water quality, and enhances the wildlife habitat. The second project is a project with an industrial partner, where we implemented a state-of-the-art catalyst technology from Dow that leads to both lower energy use and reduced direct CO2 emissions during the production process of a key ingredient for many consumer products. When we talk about the built environment, as the third example, we have two things that we can act on. First, we can reduce the embedded carbon emissions in building materials, and we can also increase energy efficiency of buildings. So this was a project where we reduced the embedded carbon emissions in the building material by reformulating a spray foam from insulation product. When we look at the next project, we worked with a customer to implement a coating technology with a low environmental footprint. This coating technology allows us to replace a 3-coat protective coating with a 2-coat protective coating for metal infrastructure. The following project, where you see some grassland, is a project where we worked with farmers in the region of Mato Grosso in Brazil to restore degraded pasture land and adopt more efficient farming practices. And through this approach, we were able to prevent reforestation and sequester carbon in soil. And you can actually visually see the improvement in the soil there in this picture. And we are measuring the soil the carbon content in the soil, so the soil organic content, to verify the amount of carbon that was captured in the soil. The next project takes us to high performance buildings. We are working together with the entire value chain to discuss and promote the adoption of low carbon approaches already in the design phase. Buildings have an average lifespan of 40 years. Hence, the decisions in the design phase to implement more energy efficient solutions are really important. And it helps, we also built a capability to quantify greenhouse gas benefits of projects. And we applied that, for instance, in the IOC headquarter building, one of the most sustainable buildings in the world. And last but not least, we are collaborating with retailers and to demonstrate how greenhouse gas impacts can be achieved by from reducing food waste with better packaging solutions.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. Thank you very much, Nicoletta, for talking us through some of those projects. Now that we've had an overview of some of those projects, perhaps we can hand over to Braulio, who will tell us how you go about measuring the impact of these projects and how you ensure their credibility. Over to you, Braulio.
Thank you, Matthew. So to measure the impact, I believe the best way to proceed is to adopt international standards as a reference to develop your own guidelines. And this is what the Dow Climate Solution means. It's a framework that was structured, supported, and based on the international standards available at the United Nations, basically the Clean Development Mechanism, and the VCS, the Voluntary Carbon Standards. So both adopt the principle of baseline and additionality to determine emissions reductions. And in the case of Dow, we decided to adopt the term climate benefits and beyond business as usual. And this difference is not only in the name, there is a limitation in this framework that the carbon offsets that are generated or the climate benefits that are produced, they cannot be traded. So that makes a huge difference because all the projects, they require a higher investment as opposed to a baseline condition, and you don't get any commercial benefit from it. And all the climate benefits are directed to offset emissions from the IOC. So the structure is based on this baseline and additionality approach, and most of the projects that were implemented by Dow, they can be seen as beyond business as usual because they are first of their kind. So it's a very strong argument to determine the condition of being beyond business as usual. Regarding the credibility, the assurance process that ERM has implemented with Dow requires from each project the development of all the documentation that you would see in a CDM project or a VCS project. It must refer to international standards and to the climate framework. It must have a project design document that will be validated by us, and then the implementation of the project must be tracked by monitoring reports that calculate and estimate the emissions reductions, the climate benefits that are generated. ERM runs on-site inspections for the most complex projects, and we issue a letter of validation and a letter of verification for all the climate benefits that are produced and the projects. One important thing is to ensure that each climate benefit unit is real, and to that end, we imposed several conservative assumptions for each one of the projects. So the likelihood is that all these projects, they deliver maybe 20 to 30% more emission reductions than what ERM has allowed the Dow to account for and to offer to the IOC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Braulio, for giving us your perspective there. Now let's hand over to Michelle again. And Michelle, perhaps you can talk us through another way that the Carbon Partnership has driven impact for the IOC.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, of course, with pleasure. I have spoken about the IOC's first two spheres of responsibility, that is, as an organisation and as owner of the Olympic Games. However, also through the IOC Dow Carbon Partnership, Dow was also able to help us respond to our objective in supporting the Olympic movement in making their operations more sustainable, hence making our impact a lot broader. In 2018, the IOC worked closely with the United Nations in the development of its Sports for Climate Action framework. The framework calls on the sports community to jointly develop a climate action agenda for sport, adhering to 5 principles, that being a greater environmental responsibility, reducing climate impact, educating for climate action, sustainable and responsible consumption, and advocating for climate action. As leader of the Olympic movement, we wanted to encourage and support the international federations and national Olympic committees that are implementing real and tangible action to address their greenhouse gas emissions and that have signed up to the framework. As part of the IOC Dow Carbon Partnership, in 2019, we were very pleased to be able to offer carbon offsets that comply with international standards to the 10 international federations listed here, that being Federation for Equestrian Sports, International Ski Federation, World Rowing, International Golf Federation, International Ice Hockey Federation, World Rugby, World Sailing, World Taekwondo, and the recognised international federations of International Orienteering Federation and International Sambo Federation. This image was taken at last year's rewards ceremony and shows representatives of the federations in question, the IOC and Dow. It was taken during the IOC's annual IF Sustainability Forum, and Dow was there to personally award each international federation with their carbon offsets. This specific initiative will continue through to 2021, during which more international federations and national Olympic committees will be encouraged to sign up to the framework, will receive climate education and support from the IOC, and of course carbon offsets to cover their residual footprint from Dow.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That brings us nicely to our second poll and another opportunity for our attendees to get involved. This time the question is, what do you look for most in a sustainability partner? So we'll run this poll again for about another 30 seconds. So what do you look for most in a sustainability partner? Is it A, shared values or objectives, B, an innovative mindset, C, good brand reputation, D, expertise or proven in sustainability, or E, financial support? So again, we'll give you about another 10 seconds to log your answers. Okay, so let's stop that there then. So let's take a look at some of the results. So it's almost an even split between expertise and proven sustainability solutions and shared values and objectives, which spoke very much to the first section of our webinar. Only 2% talked about the ability to provide financial support, and a very small number around brand reputation and an innovative mindset. Thank you very much to everyone for getting involved in that. So before we move on to part 3, let's recap on some of our learnings from part 2. So firstly, carbon mitigation is not just about purchasing offsets. There's scope to do a lot more. Secondly, verification is crucial for credibility and assessment of impact. And thirdly, partnerships can create value well beyond the initial agreed scope. Right, time to move on to the third and final section of the webinar before we move on to the Q&A section. Here we'll be discussing learnings, achievements, and the future. But before we do, here is the final question for our final poll. And this one is pretty fundamental to this webinar. How do you see sport as a platform to drive climate action across industries? We'll come back to this question following section 3. So Braulio, perhaps we can start with you. What did you learn from this
Okay, so I believe the first key element is the way you structure partnerships in order to achieve ambitious climate mitigation results. When you see how the industry traditionally organizes is a horizontal kind of partnership connecting companies of the same sector, and I believe it's a key innovation to look vertically across the value chain to get a more strong connection with the public, because this is where the next wave of reductions will be coming, and it's a key point to influence people's choices regarding what they purchase and how they use their products and how they discard those products. This is where we get the best results in terms of climate and sustainability in general. That will result in the highest quality results for the whole process. And lastly, but not least, it's really important to bring independent verification and provide credibility to the whole initiative, separating everything that you have been doing from initiatives that we have seen a lot that we can categorize as greenwashing. I believe a robust process to measure and to establish the beyond business as usual condition is a key element of any climate benefits process that you would like to implement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Braulio. Let's move on to Michelle next. Michelle, what were the key learnings that you took from this strategic partnership?
Thank you, Matthew. I have 4 key takeaways on behalf of the IOC. First of all, the IOC Dow Carbon Partnership was successful because it delivered agreed upon results. And in fact, it exceeded predictions in regards to the quantity of credits generated. The partnership also went above and beyond expectations by responding to a need that was previously unknown, that is, encouraging and supporting the Olympic movement in understanding and addressing their own carbon footprint. Think outside the box. By that, it was not necessarily an obvious choice for the IOC and Dow to join forces around carbon. However, approaching it from two different perspectives was very beneficial for both parties. And finally, the success of the carbon partnership during the past 4 years can also be seen as a springboard for the IOC's recent decision for the IOC as an organisation and for the Olympic Games from 2030 onwards to be climate positive.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And finally, Nicoletta, perhaps you can talk a little bit about some of the things that Dow achieved through this carbon partnership and some of your learnings.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, I couldn't wrap up this conversation without showing the results. This slide is a slide that makes us all very proud. Every one of these data points represent a project verification. So it's the portfolio of projects, and at regular intervals we verify the results and get them then also third-party acknowledged, third-party verified through ERM. And so to date, at the end of 2019, actually, this is the status. The combined carbon mitigation programs with Sochi 2014, Rio 2016, and the IOC have delivered 5 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And we are not stopping here. We are expecting to exceed 7 million tons by 2026. So the 5 million ton number, just to give you a frame of reference, compares to the emissions of 1 million cars in 1 year. So if we now think about what have we learned from this partnership, there are 4 key takeaways. We see partnership to continue being an important piece to drive impact and legacy beyond the existing time frame here, 2017 to 2020. As I said, we expect to get the 7 million tons by 2026. And the innovation and sustainability legacy of the project actually goes well beyond just the actual greenhouse gas reductions, because the innovation and sustainability legacy is also in the hundreds of conversations and in helping us build capacity at the local level with customers and partners. The partnership demonstrates how material science and innovation can help organizations reduce emissions. And we think this is also relevant much beyond this program. The partnership evolved naturally as we were working on common goals. And for the last point, further opportunities for strategic partnerships. Guided by our ambition and inspired by our new carbon targets, we are seeking to collaborate more, to gain momentum and to drive bigger impact with our customers and with our partners.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. Before we move on to the question and answer section, let's recap some of the learnings from part 3. So Braulio's key takeaway was that all aspects of the value chain need to be leveraged to further climate action. Michelle's main comment revolved around the fact that we need to think outside the box when it comes to finding strategic partners. And Nicoletta believes that the more scope for evolution, the more impactful that partnership can be. So the final question before we move on to the question and answer section is for the audience, and that is, how do you see sport as a platform to drive climate action across industries? And I'll be launching our third and final poll now before you can ask your own questions to our panel. So do you see sport as an opportunity to access a broader audience? Does sport act as a convener? Does it represent a strong marketing platform, or is there another element that comes to your mind? I'll give you another 10 or 15 seconds to answer this question. Okay, so we'll stop it there. And it looks like, again, the majority, just over half, think the access to the broader audience is sport's main platform for driving climate action across industries. 21% think it's a strong convener, and 18% see it as a good marketing platform. Great. Now let's move on to the Q&A section. And we have some questions to get through before we finish in about 10 minutes time. But before we do, I have one question to ask our panelists, particularly in light of the current global situation. How can organizations continue to make climate action a priority when other major issues, like COVID-19, for example, are at the top of our mind collectively? And perhaps we can stick with Nicoletta for this one to begin with. Nicoletta, what's your view on this?
Thank you, Matthew, for the question. Well, only 1 week ago, we launched our ambitious carbon targets as we get out of the pandemic, hopefully out of the pandemic. And so that really shows a reconfirmed commitment to working on this issue from Dow's side by launching these targets just 1 week ago.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nicoletta. Braulio, how about yourself? How can we keep climate action top of mind when an issue like COVID-19 is just dominating global discourse currently?
Well, I think that the first element is to learn from the current crisis how we can better tackle climate change issues based on the lessons learned of this whole process. And one key takeaway of the COVID-19 crisis is that people, yes, they can change their behavior if they realize the importance of the topic. So I think that moving forward, I would give more focus to measures that help to reduce climate greenhouse gas emissions across the whole aspects of life involving the big public. And I believe that's why I think this partnership is perfect and should be more and more present in the world in the future. Thank you.
And what's your view, Michelle? How can we keep climate action at the very top of mind when COVID-19 is obviously such a big issue currently?
Yes, of course, that's obvious. It is, and it will remain so for quite a while yet. But that doesn't take away from the fact that climate change is constant, that we are being impacted by it now and continue to be impacted. So for me, it's not a matter of losing focus. It's addressing both at the same time, learning to live with both. But it's all linked. It's all linked from my perspective, from a sustainability perspective.
One of the questions we got from our audience is, obviously we're talking about the IOC, which is a sports organization, and Dow, which is a petrochemical company. Are there any transferable learnings that you can transfer to any kind of organization, to any type of industry, that you can use, that you can take from this particular partnership and leverage in another kind of partnership? Perhaps, Braulio, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think that the key takeaway was about this vertical penetration across the value chain. And unfortunately, I don't see too many entities that are as recognized and that are as reputable as the IOC. So I believe it's probably the best option to conduct this type of activity with a very widespread breadth with the public. And again, with a company like Dow that was so forward thinking, because they started this process 6 years ago. And it was really a vision about the future to make this investment and work in this kind of initiative. So I believe that any initiative should be based on this forward-looking approach, trying to foresee the future and being brave to make the investment in something that will not deliver results in the day after tomorrow. Thank you.
Well, what's your opinion, Nicoletta? Can organizations and industries and from other industries take any cues from this partnership and use those lessons and implement within their own organizations?
Yes, Yes, absolutely. When I think about this partnership, it's something that, for instance, Michelle said. She talked about the fact that it was maybe not the most obvious choice. So go out and find partners that are clearly complementary to you in terms of having completely different skills and completely different reach. So this selecting partners that are also a bit beyond your business as usual. I think that is an important element. Then the second one, I think, is about setting ambitious targets. We actually always thought about this partnership as having having the potential to go beyond the offsetting, the mitigation. We wanted to get beyond the accounting approach to set more a vision of to inspire our customers and value chain partners to do as much as possible, not just what was needed. And then the third piece is to try to find a different way to engage with customers. And this is what helped us using the Olympic brand, but it could be also another convening factor or acceleration factor. So these three things: an unusual partner, ambitious goals, don't stop with the accounting approach, but try to go beyond accounting and offsetting just the footprint. And then the third element, to find an unusual convening factor.
Thank you, Nicoletta. What's your view, Michelle? Is there any kind of learnings that other organizations can take from this partnership, do you think?
Mm-hmm. In fact, Nicoletta has summed it up very, very well. For me, it's as with any collaboration, you must be aligned in your objectives, and you must well define, be very clear about what you want to get out of the partnership and what your objectives are. As Nicoletta said, and as I said previously, it's looking outside of your comfort zone as well, to seeing who else is around and what organizations are doing what in which areas, and identify the ones that you can see are making real progress and in which areas, and reach out to them. Most organizations are going to be very happy to at least have an initial discussion in order to be able to broaden reach, especially in these sorts of topics.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And perhaps we'll stick with you for this question. And it's come from one of our audience members. Have you considered the use of athletes' visibility and involved them to raise awareness around climate change?
Yes, definitely. It's a very good question, and we have actually started working with a number of athletes who are passionate about this topic, and also some athletes passionate about other sustainability-related topics. But yes, it is a great way of getting messages across, because athletes are obviously seen as role models. They have followings. People look to them, people follow what they say and how they live as well. The only thing is, of course, when you work with athletes or with anyone in relation to a specific topic, and specifically to sustainability topics, is that the people, they must be passionate and must really believe in what they're saying. And part of the IOC's role in working with athletes is actually to support those athletes. In many cases, they are passionate about climate change. They see the impact that climate is having on their sport, but they don't feel comfortable actually talking about it or receiving questions about it. So that's part of our role, is to equip them with the data and the way of responding, and giving them things to read so that they do feel comfortable in actually going out and broadening their impact as well, and talking about these types of topics.
Thank you very much, Michelle. One final question before we wrap this up, and this is going to be quite an interesting one, hopefully, for the audience. Some organizations can be a little bit uncomfortable about going into partnership with other organizations and working collaboratively with them. If you were to speak to an organization and to try and pitch them and tell them that there's about the benefits of working with a partner in terms of achieving organizational objectives and trying to achieve bigger goals like climate change. You know, how would you sum it up for them? How would you characterize the experience? Perhaps we can start with you, Nicoletta.
So for me, the experience was really to be able to reach beyond our team's limits. So this partnership has allowed us to create a ripple effect with our customers and in our industries to reach beyond our own limits and accelerate the adoption of technologies. That's what this experience felt like. It started off with just a handful of projects, and it has now developed into a very substantial project portfolio. And at the same time, we know that this project could lead to additional projects. So I can really see and experience this ripple effect. That's what it felt like for me.
And Michelle, do you have anything to add to bring it close to the Q&A section?
For me, for the IOC, I should say, the partnership has been, of course, a very positive experience. As I said, it has delivered the results that we wanted and actually gone above and beyond. But for me, the thing that attracted me at the very beginning was the fact that the project was changing business as usual. That it wasn't just simply responding to our request of carbon neutrality, which it did successfully, but in doing so, it actually changed the way organizations operate and the products and the technologies that they used. So they are now using lower carbon technologies and products. And to me, that is, it's leaving a legacy as well. It is not just responding to our need, it's leaving a legacy and changing business.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you very much to our audience for those fantastic questions. I can see there are a number of questions that have been answered, some that have specifically asked for some of our speakers specifically to talk about some of those key points, and we'll pass those questions on to our panelists. Thank you all so much for your important questions again. Let's run through the key learnings from today's webinar before we go our separate ways. So to create a successful and impactful strategic partnership that contributes to a larger global goal like climate action, there must be a long-term mindset and patience to see the job through. All aspects of the value chain need to come together to contribute. You should look for value well beyond the initially agreed scope of the partnership any way you can, and it's important to think outside the box when it comes to potential partners. The most impactful partner may not be the most obvious one. Thanks again to our audience for spending time with us today and contributing via the polls and the Q&A section. Your participation is greatly appreciated. Thank you to our panelists, Nicoletta Piccolrovazzi, Michelle Lemaitre, and Braulio Pikman, who took time out from their busy lives to provide us with insight and value. A recording of this webinar will be sent to your email in the next day or so. Please feel free to rewatch it and share it with any colleagues who may find the content useful. And don't forget to mark the 29th of July in your diary. That's the date of our next webinar, which will be focusing on reimagining the built environment for a low carbon economy. We look forward to seeing you there. In the meantime, stay safe and goodbye from all of us.